Thank you, gentlemen. We now turn to Representative Larsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, I have a very Washington State-focused question to start, and it has to do with culvert funding. We passed an $800 million program as part of the IIJA that included contributions from states, locals, and tribal governments to replace culverts. It's a big issue in our state, and when can we expect information about IIJA culvert funding program?
So we're hard at work on this. It is a new territory for us in many regards, so we've been working with interagency partners like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and others. I've told my team I'd like to see this guidance out by the time the salmon are finished running, and hopefully it'll be before the peak. So that's the best answer I can give you. Late summer is really.
There may be no salmon running at all if we don't get the culvert funding out.
We're hard at work on it.
Yeah, I understand. I wanted to underline that for us in the Northwest. Thanks so much. Changing the direction a little bit, one aspect of the equity question. We've been exploring equity issues in my district and throughout the country, and there's a lot of variety in how people define equity and so on, but there are aspects of it. One issue has to do with equity and data collection. If we don't collect good data, then we don't really know specifically the impacts on some communities, make it impossible for DOT to factor that into community efforts to address inequities. So how have you used data collection for underrepresented groups, and how is that factored into the equity action plan in the DOT?
So what we're trying to do is strike the right balance between gathering enough data to set good policy and know how we're doing as far as the effects, benefits, and impacts of our policies and projects on disadvantaged communities, without creating such a burdensome framework for data collection that it's actually low-income communities or small rural communities, in other words, the ones we'd most want to help from an equity perspective, that find it prohibitive to apply for projects or to participate in our processes. I think that balance leaves room for us to gather data at a more granular level, though, and I think we have a responsibility to do that. We still have relatively little visibility, for example, on who gets the economic benefit of the dollars once they go out of our building, so to speak. And I think that, especially given what technology now makes possible in terms of managing this data, we're in a position to, in what I hope will be an administratively lightweight fashion, gather more information than we've ever had and use that for decision support.
There may be examples. Puget Sound Regional Council has a data tracker on equity that we can pass on to you. We're looking at. But related to this issue of equity and small rural communities, which I also represent, got a big variety in my district. And one of the challenges that they have, and we shared with Mayor Landrieu as well, is just the lack of capacity to apply for competitive grants. Competitive grants that are called rural transportation grants, and they just don't have the capacity to get their arms around that. Has the DOT thought through this problem? Because I know Mayor Landrieu has heard of this issue throughout the implementation phase.
Yes, two things were at least two things I can point to that we're doing about this. It resembles my own experience as a mayor who led a city that didn't necessarily have the resources for a robust federal affairs team, and there are communities much smaller than my hometown of South Bend trying to get access here. The first is to make the processes simpler on the front end. So when you see us taking a step like a combined notice of funding opportunity that rolls infra and mega and the rural surface transportation program into one, part of what we're trying to do is just have literally fewer pages of paper out there in the process so that it is easier to navigate for an applicant of any size. The second thing is to make sure that we're proactively engaging project sponsors or would-be project sponsors, and where possible, and we do have some funding for this, though there's always going to be more demand than we can support, the kind of direct technical assistance that can help walk them through the process, especially when you're looking at a first-time applicant.
Thanks. And then on workforce issues and equity, perhaps you touched on this with discussion on DBE, but and you have in some respects, but are there other steps that DOT is taking to ensure that minority-owned businesses are in fact considered for and selected for these projects?
Quite a few, and part of how I view this is that it's not only a matter of fairness, although that's reason enough, but also the volume and the pace of infrastructure work we're taking on as a country. is going to demand everything that we can provide as a country as far as talent, entrepreneurial talent, and skilled work. And what that means is that we can't succeed if we leave any talent on the table. And so as you look across our programs, some of them can directly support workforce development in a way that we think benefits both labor and DBE ownership. Some of it doesn't require that, but certainly leaves space for project sponsors to do so. And the effects are
Can I stop you there? Because
compelling.
I want to respect the 5-minute rule, and before the chair makes me respect the 5-minute rule. But we'll follow up with your staff with the rest of the answer. Thanks.
Thank you.